Rain slid down the windows of the Rover's return like a curtain refusing to rise, and Will Harris stood on the pavement outside, phone buzzing in his hand, wondering how a single message could tilt an entire evening off its axis. Megan Foster was inside somewhere, laughing too loudly to hide the ache he knew she carried. The text she'd sent him 5 minutes earlier was simple enough, but it landed heavy. We need to talk. Properly. In Weatherfield, those words never came without consequence. Will had always been the steady one. A builder by trade, reliable to a fault, the sort of man who fixed loose hinges for neighbors without being asked and never missed a shift. Megan was the opposite in ways that drew him in and pushed him away at the same time. She worked at the salon, quick-witted, fiercely independent, carrying the scars of past disappointments like invisible tattoos. They'd circled each other for months, dancing around what everyone else already saw, but timing had been cruel. There was always something in the way. An ex who wouldn't let go. A family expectation that pressed too hard. A fear neither of them wanted to name. When Megan finally stepped outside, the glow from the pub lights framed her face, eyes bright but uncertain. She didn't waste time on small talk. She never did. I can't go home tonight, she said, voice steady but brittle at the edges. If I do, I'll overthink everything again, and I'm tired of being brave on my own. Will felt the familiar pull to protect, to solve, but this wasn't a broken door or a cracked wall. This was a human heart, fragile and fierce. We can walk, he offered. Clear our heads. They walked past familiar corners, past houses that held stories of triumph and regret. Megan talked about her mother's expectations, how love in her family had always been conditional, always something to earn. Will admitted his fear of becoming invisible, of being the dependable man people leaned on but never truly chose. The more they spoke, the more the night seemed to listen, the rain softening, the streetlights blurring. When they reached the hotel on the edge of town, it wasn't planned. It simply appeared, warm and bright against the dark. Megan stopped, breath catching. I don't want this to be a mistake, she said quietly. I don't want to wake up tomorrow and feel like I ran from my problems instead of facing them. Will didn't reach for her hand right away. That was his challenge, he realized. He was used to acting, to fixing, but now he needed to wait, to let her choose. Then we don't run, he said. We stop. We talk. If all we do is sleep and wake up with clearer minds, that's enough. Inside, the lobby was hushed, the kind of calm that invites honesty. At the desk, Megan hesitated again, old fears rising. She'd learned the hard way that closeness could be used against you. Will saw it and spoke softly, not to persuade but to reassure. Whatever we do tonight, it doesn't define us unless we let it. We get to decide what this means. They took a room, two tired souls carrying more baggage than their overnight bags. The space was neutral, safe, a pause button on the noise of the street. They sat on opposite ends of the bed at first, laughter bubbling up at the awkwardness. Then the laughter faded into something deeper, more honest. Megan talked about the ex who'd promised everything and delivered nothing, about the nights she'd cried in silence because she didn't want to be seen as weak. Will shared the story of his father leaving, of learning early that stability was something you built yourself. The walls between them thinned, not because of touch, but because of trust. There was a moment, later, when the air shifted, when the question they'd both been avoiding hung between them. Will felt it, the temptation to rush forward, to turn closeness into certainty. But he remembered her fear, remembered his own promise. He met her eyes and said, "We don't have to prove anything tonight." Megan exhaled, relief washing over her face. "Thank you," she said, and in that gratitude was something profound. They lay back, not entwined but connected, the quiet hum of the room wrapping around them. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was peaceful. Morning light crept in gently, and with it came clarity. Over weak hotel coffee, they laughed again, this time lighter. The challenges they faced hadn't vanished. Megan still had to confront her family. Will still had to risk being more than the dependable option. But something had shifted. They'd chosen patience over impulse, honesty over fear. Back on the street, the town looked the same, but they were different. Megan squeezed Will's hand, not as a promise, but as a choice made freely. "Let's do this properly," she said. "No running." Will nodded, feeling stronger for having waited. "Together," he replied. In Weatherfield, stories often turned on dramatic moments, but this one was quieter, built on restraint and respect. Will and Megan didn't find answers in a hotel room. They found the courage to face their lives with open eyes and open hearts. And sometimes, that kind of night changes everything. Morning didn't rush them. It lingered, soft and forgiving, as Will and Megan stepped back into their routines with a quiet understanding that something important had begun, even if nothing flashy had happened. Chapter 2 didn't start with fireworks. It started with reality, and reality, they quickly learned, was the harder test. By midday, Megan was back at the salon, scissors snipping, blow dryers humming, her smile practiced but distracted. Her phone buzzed more than usual. A message from her mother asking why she hadn't come home. Another from her sister, sharp and judgmental, hinting that Megan was losing her way again. Each word chipped at the calm she'd found the night before. She caught her reflection in the mirror and wondered if she really was selfish for wanting a life that felt like her own. Across the street, Will was on a building site, hands deep in dust and cement, but his mind was miles away. His boss joked about overtime, about how reliable Will always was, and for the first time, it didn't feel like praise. It felt like a cage. He thought about Megan's words, about choosing properly, and realized how often he'd let life choose for him. When his phone buzzed with her name, his heart steadied. Just 2 words. "You okay?" He smiled, wiped his hands, and replied, trying. "You." They met that evening at Roy's Rolls, neutral ground where the clatter of cutlery made honesty feel less exposed. Megan arrived tense, shoulders tight, emotions close to the surface. Will noticed immediately. He didn't interrupt when she spoke about her family, about how love in her world came with rules and consequences. He listened, really listened, even when it hurt to hear how small she'd been made to feel. "I don't want to keep choosing between you and them," she said, voice low. "But every time I stand up for myself, I'm made to feel like the villain." Will understood more than she knew. He told her about his fear of disappointing people, about how being dependable had become his identity because it felt safer than being vulnerable. "I don't want to be the easy choice," he admitted. "I want to be chosen. Properly." Their challenge wasn't passion. It was pressure. Pressure from families, from expectations, from the invisible script everyone seemed to follow. And pressure had a way of forcing decisions before hearts were ready. That pressure came knocking sooner than expected. Megan's ex appeared outside the salon the next day, uninvited and unapologetic, reminding her of promises she'd broken by moving on. Will heard about it from someone else before Megan could tell him herself, and for a brief, ugly moment, doubt crept in. Old habits whispered that maybe stepping back would be easier. That maybe being steady meant staying silent. Instead, he showed up. He didn't confront. He didn't accuse. He simply stood beside Megan when she needed it most. That simple act changed everything. Her ex left, frustrated and exposed, and Megan felt something crack open inside her. Support didn't have to be loud. Sometimes it was just presence. Still, the tension followed them home. Megan worried Will would grow tired of the drama. Will worried he'd be pulled into a storm he couldn't fix. That night, they argued for the first time. Not shouting, but sharp words fueled by fear. Megan accused Will of not understanding what it meant to fight your own family. Will snapped back that she didn't see how much he was risking by stepping forward at all. Silence followed, heavy and uncertain. It was Megan who broke it, tears slipping despite her efforts to stay strong. "I'm scared," she said. "Every time something good starts, I expect it to be taken away." Will softened instantly. He moved closer, not to solve, but to share the weight. "So am I," he admitted. "But maybe being scared together is better than being brave alone." That was the turning point. Not a grand declaration, but a shared truth. They didn't promise perfection. They promised honesty. They agreed to face their challenges head-on, even when it was uncomfortable, even when walking away would have been easier. By the end of the week, Megan had a difficult conversation with her mother, setting boundaries she'd never dared to set before. It didn't end in hugs or instant understanding, but it ended with respect. Will asked his boss for reduced overtime, choosing his life over endless availability. It felt terrifying. It also felt right. As they walked down Coronation Street that evening, hand in hand, the streetlights flickering on around them, they knew the road ahead wouldn't be smooth. But Chapter 2 wasn't about escape anymore. It was about choice. And this time, they were choosing each other, not as a mistake, not as a moment, but as a deliberate step forward into something real. Chapter 3 arrived quietly, but it carried weight, the kind that tests whether promises were spoken in hope or meant to survive pressure. The street was unusually busy that week, gossip moving faster than traffic, eyes lingering a little too long whenever Will and Megan passed by together. In Weatherfield, nothing stayed private for long. Megan felt it first, the subtle shift in how people spoke to her, how smiles came with curiosity attached. Someone at the salon mentioned the hotel night, dressed up as concern but sharpened by judgment. Megan laughed it off, but the old shame stirred, the familiar feeling of being watched, measured, and found lacking. Will noticed the change too. He caught whispers on the building site, jokes that pretended to be harmless. He didn't laugh along this time. Instead, he felt anger rise, not explosive, but steady and protective. For years, he'd avoided conflict to keep the peace. Now peace felt less important than dignity. The real test came when Megan was offered a promotion at the salon, a chance to manage her own branch. It was everything she'd worked for, but it came with a catch. The new location was on the other side of town, longer hours, less flexibility, and less time with Will. Her excitement was tangled with guilt before she even told him. They sat in her living room that evening, cups of tea growing cold between them. Megan finally spoke, words rushing out as if she feared they'd dissolve if she waited too long. She expected disappointment, maybe even resentment. What she didn't expect was Will's silence. His challenge wasn't jealousy. It was fear. Fear that supporting her dream might mean slowly stepping out of her life. Fear that choosing her happiness could cost him his place beside her. When he finally spoke, his voice was honest but strained. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I just don't know where that leaves us." The words hurt more than Megan wanted to admit. Old wounds reopened instantly, the familiar story playing in her head that ambition always meant abandonment. For the first time since they'd chosen each other, she pulled back. Not dramatically, but enough for distance to grow. Days passed heavier than they should have. Messages became shorter. Meetings became rushed. Both told themselves it was temporary, but doubt crept in quietly. Megan wondered if love always demanded sacrifice from one side. Will wondered if he was destined to be left behind no matter how hard he tried to keep up. Their breaking point came on a Friday night, back where it had all begun, outside the Rover's return. The rain returned too, as if the street remembered. This time, the tension couldn't be ignored. Megan accused Will of holding her back without meaning to. Will accused Megan of already planning a life where he didn't quite fit. The argument spilled out raw and unfiltered, every fear laid bare. And then, unexpectedly, it stopped. Will took a breath and did something he'd never done before. He didn't retreat. He didn't apologize just to end the discomfort. He told the truth. "I'm scared," he said. "But I don't want my fear to decide your future. Or mine." Megan felt something shift again, deeper this time. She realized her challenge wasn't choosing between love and ambition. It was believing she deserved both. Tears came, not from sadness, but release. "I don't want to outrun you," she said softly. "I want you walking beside me, even if the pace changes." They didn't solve everything that night. They didn't map out schedules or make promises they couldn't keep. What they did was choose respect over control, growth over comfort. They agreed to try, not perfectly, but honestly. By the end of the week, Megan accepted the promotion, and Will adjusted his hours again, not because he had to, but because he wanted a life that stretched with her, not against her. They learned that love wasn't about staying still together. It was about moving forward without letting go. As they stood on Coronation Street one evening, lights glowing, noise humming, Megan rested her head on Will's shoulder. The future was uncertain, still demanding, still risky. But Chapter 3 wasn't about fear winning. It was about two people learning that real love doesn't ask you to shrink. It asks you to grow, even when growing hurts, and to trust that what you're building together is strong enough to hold the change.